Blog Talk Radio.
Om Shabbat Shalom, Holy Way of the Most High. Om Shabbat Shalom, I sense your presence. Om Shabbat Shalom, Holy Way of the Most High. Om Shabbat Shalom, I sense your presence. And I am the light within your soul. In the essence of truth and right, love makes the circle whole. And here we stand in line, waiting for some sacred sign. But to find the balance is the purpose of this time. To restore the balance of the universal mind. And in the presence of my Lord of light and love, everything I see aspiring to be free. And when I call to thee, and come on bended knee, surrender to the all-pervading light and love. Reflections of the one surrounding me with love. And I sense your presence. I sense your presence. I sense your presence. I sense your presence. Within and without, above and below, yeah. East, west, north and south, I sense your presence. Without and within, below and above, yeah, yeah. East, west, north and south, I sense your presence. I sense your presence. Presence of my Lord of light and love, everything I find in tune with the divine. And here we stand in line, waiting for some sacred sign. But to find the balance is the purpose of this time. To restore the balance of the universal mind. And I am the light within your soul. In the essence of truth and right, love makes the circle whole. And when I call to thee, and come on bended knee, surrender to the all-pervading light and love. Reflections of the one surrounding me with love. For to find the balance is the purpose of this time. To restore the balance of the universal mind. I sense your presence. I sense your presence. I sense your presence. I sense your presence. Om Shabbat Shalom, Holy Way of the Most High. Om Shabbat Shalom, I sense your presence. Om Shabbat Shalom, Holy Way of the Most High. Om Shabbat Shalom, I sense your presence. Om Shabbat Shalom, Holy Way of the Most High. Om Shabbat Shalom, holy angel of the Most High. Om Shabbat Shalom, I sense your presence. I sense your presence.
Thank you for joining me here tonight on Activating Compassion in the Midnight Hour. My name is Jessie Ann Nichols George, and I'm your hostess this evening. The music you were listening to there at the beginning of the show is I Sense Your Presence. It's by Shem Shai, a group I originally met around the Sedona, Arizona area. And, of course, they're just living their dream now, making lots of different music and building on it all the time, and traveling around the world, just living their dream, basically. I do want to extend a welcome to everybody that's joining us here tonight, whether you're returning and have listened to the show before or whether you're joining us here for the very first time. We are streaming live in 3 additional places. We are on TalkStream Live, StreamFinder, and Penn, also known as Para Encounters Network, and I welcome everybody listening through there as well, in addition to those that are catching our shows in the archives or through the podcast at tunein.com, iTunes, and through my YouTube channel. Here at Activating Compassion in the Midnight Hour, I look at the different ways that compassion exists in our lives, how to remove our blocks, resistances, frustrations, and more. Some weeks I'm discussing different aspects of how compassion is in our life, how it affects our life, and the different areas of compassion. And then some of the weeks I'm doing more exercises and practical implementations. Those that have listened in for the last 2 weeks know that I actually did my own exercises and shows, one on chakras last week and one on manifestation the week before. And then many times, like tonight, I've got incredible guests on the show so that you get to learn about how their work and how other things complement and work with compassion. And then I also highlight different musical artists along the way. Last year I had Grammy nominees Stephen Halpern and Peter Cater on the show. I've had Jill Matson on the show, Claire Hedin on the show, Bruce Ciccarelli, who, if you missed that, go back listen to that show. His music is available for free, by the way, so if you go back and catch that, you'll find his story very interesting as well. And in my own work, what I do is I focus on helping people find and use compassion in their everyday lives. I've created the Genesis Clearing Statement, which if you've missed it, you can catch it in our archives. I've authored 4 books, the most recent being You, Me, Life, Dreams, and its companion workbook, and then my first 2 books, Activating Compassion and its companion workbook. In addition, I've created the Compassion Tour, which is getting ready to start here in about 2.5 weeks. It's coming up very quickly for 2014, and we'll be running all the way through the end of December. And that includes workshops, retreats, seminars, book signings. Don't have any fundraising events coming up in this particular set, but I will be looking at fundraising events again in the 2015 tour. And you can follow the events to register for the live events through my event site, which is jessieannnicholsgeorge.eventbrite.com, as well as going on to my website, jessieannnicholsgeorge1.com, and that link is at the bottom of our show description. Just a reminder, if you enjoyed the show this evening, make certain that you tell your friends, your family, share with those people out there on the social media, because I know when I'm sharing the work that I'm doing on a show, there's always somebody that comes back and says, oh, this is just what I needed to find out about. I was just having this conversation, or I was really looking for information. Now I can come in and tune into the show. And you never know whose life you're going to make a difference with just by clicking the share button. And they can come in, listen to the archives at their convenience. And, again, they can go to actually my page of the Main Street Universe tab on my website. And, again, that's jessieannnicholsgeorge1.com. And there I've got all of the archived shows for the show here on there. And they can go in and check them all out in there. In addition, they can also, again, go to iTunes or tunein.com or to my YouTube channel, and all the shows are on there as well. Now, those that have tuned in before to the show, they know that I like to delve into the 72 Names of God, which is by Yehuda Berg, a Kabbalah master, and I love Yehuda's work. The reason I love it is because Yehuda works very similar to the way I work, and that is taking these big, giant concepts that are out there that most people shy away from and he puts them into everyday life terms. And I can really appreciate that because I find when we do that as guides and mentors and coaches and things like that, that it really helps people relate to it. And that's where I really love his work on this. So I'm going to just kind of tune in here to our message tonight. And it's really interesting as I pull this message up, and it will be up on my website, again, on my page of the Main Street Universe tab, so you can go back and look at it through the week. It's very interesting that the common name of God that came up tonight is order from chaos. And this kind of amuses me because my guest that I have on tonight, Greg Friedman, actually not too long ago just did an interview on me, and we discussed working with the shadow. So to have order from chaos come up tonight, I find is a wonderful piece of synchronicity here. And the little message that he has that starts with this is actually a quote from James Payne, and that is, "I never had a piece of toast, particularly long and wide, but I fell upon the sanded floor and always on the buttered side." And the insight he gives on this starts off with a couple of quotes. "Anything that can go wrong will. Finagle's law of dynamic negatives. If there are two or more ways to do something and one of those ways can result in a catastrophe, then someone will do it." Edward A. Murphy, Jr., from Murphy's Law. "The chance of the bread falling with the buttered side down is directly proportional to the cost of the carpet." Jennings, corollary to Murphy's Law of selective gravity. "The other line always moves faster, towards observation." And the final quote he gives on this is, "There's never time to do it right, but always time to do it over." Mescament's Law. And he goes on with his insight saying, "The numerical value of this particular name is 7, a highly significant number in Kabbalah. There are, say the Kabbalists, 10 dimensions that form reality. The highest of these 10 dimensions, called the upper 3, exist outside our physical reality. The lower 7, however, directly interact with our physical world. For this reason, the number 7 turns up in many places. 7 colors of the spectrum, 7 notes of the musical scale, 7 seas, 7 major continents, 7 days a week, 7th day of rest. Things can go dreadfully wrong in the world and in our lives when these 7 dimensions are out of alignment." The meditation Yehuda gives on this is, "Harmony always underlies chaos. With this name, balance and serenity are restored. Among the 7 days of the week, order emerges from chaos. Not only will your toast not fall on the buttered side, it won't fall at all." So again, the common name is order from chaos, and the traditional name on this is Hey Aleph Aleph. And again, you can find that on my page of the Main Street Universe tab on my website, JessieAnnNicholsGeorge1.com, and that will be up for you to review the whole upcoming week. And moving on here, just a little insight before we head off to break tonight. Have you ever worked with someone that served as your guide or mentor along your spiritual path? Have you ever had the opportunity to visit indigenous cultures? Are these a thing of the past, or will they have a part in our future? Many countries have long placed an emphasis on having a guru to guide you in your spiritual growth and development, some watching to see who might have that natural potential to take the role of shaman, elder, or other leadership place to guide others. To have a guru or spiritual guide is a true honor in many cultures. However, as this practice moved to Western worlds, it also became an opening where many were taken advantage of by those with less than pure motives and spiritual values, seeing it as an easy way to get money from those less aware. Today, people often brag about who they've studied with and in what country or system, And while these can be a great reference or guideline, my real question is, what did you learn? Not just what did someone tell you, but what was your experience? How did you grow from it? And what has it brought you to? In these days of technology, it is very easy to push aside our spiritual guides, mentors, and other indigenous cultures, much like in times gone by when we would push out the elderly and isolate them off. On the other hand, it seems that almost everyone has some sort of shaman type of credential and wear it like a title. This leads me to wonder, have we lost the balance of our teachers? I know a few years back that many great teachers went into a sort of hiding period, being less available to the general public. There was a growing concern of those that were studying things without pure intention to learn, develop, and carry on traditions. Now that we see such a mass amount of people undergoing studies, I wonder if we are really evolving to where as a collective we desire to build our awareness, or is it simply the in thing to do? A sort of must-do to be recognized. This can lead to challenges for those that are serious about finding real guides among the numerous claims and titles. It can lead us to wonder, what is the value of having a spiritual mentor or guide in today's world? And if we travel to Peru or other places of indigenous cultures, are we getting to connect truly with the people, or is it just a show for groups and tourists? Personally, I feel that it is very important to keep the connection with indigenous groups. There seems to be great value in experiencing cultures that live outside of the technical modern world, to share in and listen to the stories, the histories, the journey of those so connected to the land. For me, it's like remembering where we came from so that we can be present enough to chart a future with wisdom. It is the stories that keep life and connection. Greg Friedman is a modern-day spiritual guide. He doesn't go around flaunting his titles and credentials everywhere, but he has made connections with indigenous cultures all over the world. Some today might call him a coach, but his techniques come from ancient roots nurtured by respect and integrity to keep alive what is rapidly disappearing, sacred wisdom. Like my own work, he brings the sacred ancient teachings into present everyday life. One of the things that I find in his work is a realness, sincerity, and the desire to truly help others. This is just a few things that we need to pay attention to when we are ready to start the journey to find that person that can guide us in our own inner journey. For me, I could care less how many pieces of paper someone has lying around. What I want to know is, who are you? What are your experiences? And where can you take me if I'm going to work with you? What draws you to work with a spiritual mentor or guide? And how do you identify those that are truly doing the work from those that are trying to just sell you something? What guidelines do you have for working with someone on your inner journey? This week, our guest focuses on a component of compassion that's related to the aspect in my books of blind, deaf, and defensive. This reminds us to allow ourselves to learn from all situations by being open and present to experience what is really happening. I'm going to take a short break, and when we return, I will have Greg Friedman with me, and we will be discussing the many different facets of his work as a spiritual guide and mentor. And the song I have for you during our break tonight is called In the Lamplight. It's by Claire Hedin, and you can find out more about Claire's work by going to our website, www.clairehedin.com. That's CLAREHEDIN.com. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
In the lamplight, I come. just can't move on. Don't you see? You became my moon and and I light the candle to show you the way. May the runways of angels bring you back to me. And I stand at the window, counting the stars. Oh, my dearly beloved, one of those stars belongs to us. In the lamplight of love, in the lamplight of love, in the lamplight, I call your name, and I pray so hard for the chance to love you again. Here I met a true love of the heart. Is there anything that is stronger that will keep us apart? In the lamplight of love, in the lamplight, I call your name, and I'm dreaming of a time when I'll see you again. I see your face, I feel your skin, and I know if you knock on the door, I will let you in. I will run to let you in. Oh, in the lamplight of love.
And to Activating Compassion in the Midnight Hour. And the song that you were just listening to is called In the Lamplight. It's by Claire Hedin. And again, you can check out Claire's work at www.clairehedin.com. That's CLAREHEDIN.com. And again, if you missed my interview with Claire, you can go back and check that out. It was right around the end of 2012 when I was doing a series of things on the Ascension there. So definitely worth checking her out. And I'd like to bring on my guest tonight, Greg Friedman. He is a modern version of that which has existed in every culture, a spiritual guide and mentor. He builds bridges and helps clear paths, in part by taking the ancient wisdom of indigenous cultures and making it applicable to use in our everyday lives. Greg works one-on-one in workshops and as a couples referee and translator, as well as taking small groups of people all over the world to work with indigenous elders in remote destinations. He has studied and done ceremony with Peruvian shamans, Aborigine elders, and elders from various Native American tribes, including the Yaqui, the Deer tribe, the Lakota, and the Abenaki. Greg has taken people deep up the Ucayali, I knew I was going to stumble over a couple of these terms here, river, a tributary of the Amazon, to work with Carlitos, a Shipibo shaman in the rainforest. Go ahead, say that like 10 times fast. And up to Machu Picchu to hear Kuchu tell the stories that the anthropologists don't. In Australia, he took people to Uluru and to hear Elsie. Boy, he's got the tongue twisters in here for me. And Nangu Aborigine elder tell the creation stories, and into the tropical Daintree rainforest to experience the Aborigine healings done by the Kuku Yalanji tribe through didgeridoo, song, and music. As a guide, Greg helps you build the life of your choosing by uncovering the foundation that is already in you. In addition, Greg hosts his own radio show, Inner Journey. We will be exploring his work tonight, as well as many different facets he delves into, and you can learn more about his work at www.gregfriedman.com. That link is at the bottom of our show description. But for those that can't see it, it's GregFriedman.com. Greg, it's absolutely wonderful to have you with us here tonight.
It's fantastic spending time with you now and always. Thank you very much for having me on. By the way, you did great in pronouncing all of those words. It's tough. That's from all over the world, and it's various native tribes and how they describe things and what their words are to describe what is foreign to us in so many different ways.
Thank you. I was trying. I'm like, okay, I can get through these names. I know I can. And you say it so smoothly when you do your show and you're sharing it. Greg,
I have the advantage of being there. It helps a lot. So.
It does help when you've been there and you've written it yourself and everything. But I would love for you to share a little bit with us about who's Greg and how did Greg get into doing, all these incredible different facets? Because you're one of the few people that deal in a huge variety of things, much like myself. I don't meet a lot of people who deal in as varied of a background as I have.
Well, not to be flippant, but in one form or another, I've done this my entire life. There are many people that spend their entire lives looking for their song, looking for their passion. And fortunately for me, that's never been one of the struggles, to be of service and to find ways to learn and then to share that information. That sometimes wisdom is my passion. It's my life. It's so much of what I live for. And to say that I've done it one way or another my entire life is not being flippant. And then taking it from this amorphous, just doing it without any kind of consciousness form, and into really starting to develop tools and starting to learn, really began when I learned about what a sweat lodge was, or a stone people ceremony. And from that place, and that's a Native American ceremony, and it turns out that there's some version of a sweat lodge in every single culture across the world. And from that place, I was then, oddly enough, tricked, and this sounds like some bad joke, by a magician at a bar who later became a rabbi into going out onto a reservation. And I met an old man out there who was an incredible, incredible old man who's no longer on this planet. But he took me into his home, and he showed me, and he taught me, and he mostly just let me work and be of service. And if I could just shut up and be of service, I found that the gifts that I learned and received were just such a bounty, and I became such a wealthy man as a result.
You touched on a few things in there, and I think that some people are probably going, okay, I've heard of a sweat lodge, but what's a stone people ceremony?
Well, a sweat lodge is really a misnomer. It's sort of a convenient term that's overused and misused. A stone people lodge ceremony is really what a sweat lodge is. because it begins with the stones. And the reason we choose certain stones in a lodge is because they are the things that have been on the earth the longest. They've seen the most. They hold the wisdom. And as you're choosing which stones to put in a fire, they really choose you. They call to you. They say, all right, I have something to share this evening. And as they do, you put the stones into a very specific form into the ground. Then you build a fire over it. And you cook those stones for hours and hours and hours, to the point when the ceremony begins, they are glowing red hot. And the lodge ceremony is really symbolic of going into the womb of Mother Earth. And it's a birthing ceremony, and it's a prayer ceremony, and each round has intention and energy. And there are prayers for self, there are prayers for others, there's a giveaway round. And the giveaway round is really significant because there are so many things that each of us want to give away, to let go of. But what most of us don't understand is you can't gift wrap a box of poop and give it to God or give it to the universe. It has to have value. And one of the great things in finding that value is then we actually find the value within ourselves as we release that has served us, that is now ready to go serve somebody else. For example, in a giveaway round, say somebody's a little bit overweight, they're a chunky monkey, and they want to give away some of that weight. Well, all right, what am I going to do about this? How am I going to give this weight to somebody else? Well, you're not giving the weight, you're giving the gift away. And what happens is a lot of times people have weight on because it serves as a suit of armor, a layer of protection that literally and figuratively insulates them from the outside world. Well, that person that had that suit of armor on may have garnered enough strength, enough recognition of self, enough trust that they no longer need to be wearing a suit of armor in order to feel strong or protected. And then in that giveaway round, you could give that away freely because you're no longer boxing up something and putting a bow on something that you think is disgusting or icky or horrid. You're recognizing the gift that you are and the gift that it is, and that the transition of the form that's no longer necessary in your life. And then the last round of a lodge is the dream round. That's when you let things go. You just let it all go up to the universe, up into the ethers. And from that place, you've said your piece, you've done your work, now you release it in order for it to manifest. And then you come out and you feast. Because every great ceremony, needs to be followed by a celebration of what you've gone through, of who you are, what you've learned, what you've experienced, and just to say thank you. Gratitude is so integrally important in every single thing that we do, and most people overlook it. And there are so many ways to be grateful. There's a man that I used to work with named Ayodemi of the Ifa tribe of Yoruba, and he was a high priest. And I still remember there's a place out here called the Magic Castle, and it's this private club where all these magicians go to, and I was fortunate enough to be able to be there with a high priest of the Ifa tribe and the chief, for lack of a better way of saying it, of the Yakis, the spiritual leader of that tribe. And this man in a dashiki and a cap stood up and he said, every 5 minutes you should say, thank you, God. Thank you, God. And I went, all right, well, sounds interesting, makes kind of sense, so let me just try it in my life. What the heck? Every 5 minutes, just for 2 days, I made a commitment. I'm going to say, thank you, God. I don't care what's going on. I don't care how busy any of us are. There's always time just to say, thank you, God. And if you don't want God in that particular form, you could say thank you, universe, or you could just say thank you. And you will be blown away at the things that open up, at about the way that the universe reflects back to you happiness and joy and a clear path if you just express gratitude for who you are, as you are, where you are. Now, I know you asked about the lodge ceremony, and I think I got that in there as I babbled around about 12 other places as well. Did I answer your question?
You did, and of course stimulated some more questions there, as we tend to do with each other, I think, in there. But you brought up several good points, and people do underrate the gratitude factor in things, especially where it comes to our challenges and the things that we're letting go of. And I'm glad that you brought up the aspect of seeing the gift in what we're clearing, as well as in this process, because so many people, they're out there going, I have to get rid of this, I have to get this block out of my life, I have to get this challenge out of my life, but they haven't seen the gift in that. And so, as you say, you can't give it away until you see that gift. So I find that to be an incredibly powerful piece there.
And I'll tell you, you have no idea or maybe you do, the visceral, reactive fervor that comes up when I say something like that, because people will go to the extremes and talk about rape or death or all kinds of things that are hideous and horrible. But what we don't understand is everything is an opportunity. Everything in our existence, no matter how difficult or easy or assigned to being wonderful or assigned to being horrible, everything is a gift. It's all here for us. The universe wants us to be happy. It's conspiring for our happiness, and all we have to do is play along.
That's really true, and that focus has been an important one of mine, and it's interesting that you brought up some of those horrors of life, because I went through, for example, a very challenging period in my life, going between, my 20th to 21st birthday, or 21st to 22nd birthday, I guess it was, where I went through a process of being date raped 7 times in that 1 year. And I see so many people that they freak out and they become this victim to that situation instead of seizing it as an opportunity and say, there's a reason why I went through this. There's something that I need to learn, and am I really going to sit down and be one of those victims that goes on some talk show and says, oh, poor me, or am I going to pick myself up and go, you know what, I have a message to give people. And I chose the latter.
I'm sorry, you go ahead, please.
I was just going to say I happened to choose the latter in that situation and said, this is not going to stop me from having a healthy relationship with somebody.
And was that the ultimate gift for you? Was that you were choosing to be healthy in relationship?
I was choosing to be healthy, and it was also teaching me some other things, I would say, about my own energy in that process, to not deny passion or sensuality. So many times we're trained in society, you've got to dress conservative, and I'm not telling people to go out there and dress like a slut, but they also need to be able to embrace that sensuality, because when it's repressed, sometimes we can draw those things in, and we see what happens. I learned that by repressing that energy, it brought me some unhealthy situations. I also saw that I didn't need that in my life.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I admire your strength. I admire your ability to be conscious and to choose immensely, because There are people that have gone through it once and shut down and wall up and refuse to engage. And I know it's hard. I know it's difficult. But the things that they are depriving themselves of as a result of those choices or those reactions, as the case may be, are so wonderful and so life-affirming that it seems like such a shame to do without sensuality, without sexuality. We are mind, body, and spirit. And so often, so many of us want to do one, maybe two, but not as often the whole trio. And the trio's a great little combo platter.
Absolutely. I mean, it's, you look in most cultures and belief systems, and they talk about Trinity aspects over and over again. So the way I look at it is, if you try to ignore one of them, they're going to come at you in a really strong way. So you take it on.
Yeah, and what you just were talking about is really essentially what my job is. And to explain about my job, I'd have to talk about karma and dharma for a second, if that's okay with you.
Go right ahead.
So my understanding of karma is that karma's not some cosmic cop. It's not some punitive force. It's not going to be like, if you hit somebody, then the universe is going to hit you. Karma is more of an aid or an assistant. It's a curb that's going to bump you more towards the center of the road and help you flow more easily. And it's not going to be after you. It's not going to be a demon that's out to get you, no matter how, in quotation marks, good or bad you might have been. It's going to be there to assist us in the same way. You know, there are cars. There's this little ride in Disneyland called Autotopia, and it's for kids, and they drive around on these little cars, and the way they stay on the track is there's this rail that keeps them going along the path. And essentially, karma is just this rail that keeps us going along the path. And if we veer too far, we're going to bump into it. And if we veer off with any kind of velocity, we're going to bump into it hard, and it might jar us a bit. It might hurt us a bit even. But it's not there to be mean or to be cruel or to be, the judge and jury. It's not there to get us. Karma, in my understanding, is there to help us get back into our dharmic flow. And what I mean by that is, our dharmic flow is, if we're living according to our essence, according to our truth, according to our soul, and we're listening to the truest aspect of our beings, then we're living within our dharmic flow. And if we do that, things don't have to be a struggle. We don't have to get bopped over. We don't have to run into a curb. We just get to flow with ease and with grace. And when we go off that path, we get bumped back in. And my job as a guide is essentially to be karma. If you're going over and veering off your path, you come to me and I, give you a little nudge or maybe a little whisper in the ear to go, hey, maybe you want to think about this. And that's dramatically different than what a lot of other people do that are psychologists or psychiatrists. My job is to guide you. My job is to go into that dark room that you choose and help you find the light switch and then let you turn it on. And then what you do with that light is entirely up to you. Now, the reason I'm going you along this whole path is because it's not about me. But if I can help you recognize the direction to find all of those things and then to find the strength to turn on the light switch, then you recognize your own power. And when you make choices with the vision that you have with that light, then they're your choices and they're empowered choices. They're not perfect. They're not ideal. but they're yours, and you get to grow with them, and you get to learn with them. Then it's not another thing that you were saying in your opening when you were talking about shamans. And, you know, in the 60s and 70s, it was gurus. And, you know, now it's shamans are all the catchword. There are too many people that too freely call themselves that, in my opinion. And the truth of the matter is, it catches on so easily because a lot of times we don't want to be guided to that light switch, and we don't want to have the power, and we don't want to have the choice, because what we're looking for is some kind of very airy-fairy instant karma that we could do with just, you know, adding a little powdered something into a glass, drinking it, and then everything's going to be groovy. But that's so disempowering, and it so takes out the wonderful, ecstatic process, the gift that we're given of living this life and being on this path and being in a process. We are perfect in process. We are not ideal. And it's not a quick fix. There is no, let's get to the end of this. There is no end of this. So it's so dramatically more important to be here now. You know, they've done study after study after study, and all roads lead back to, if you want happiness, it is imperative that you be here now. Lao Tzu said, you know, anger is caused by looking back, depression is caused by projecting forward, and happiness is by being present. Eckhart Tolle wrote that book, and really the entire contents of the book are summed up in the title of the book, and his book is called Be Here Now. And you hear all these TED Talks talk about happiness, and what they're saying is be present, because scientific study, ancient wisdom, all roads lead back to your happiness is being in the process and being present in the process, and anything else is just a distraction or a detraction from your own personal happiness. And there's no place else to be. There's no other thing that is more important. There's nowhere else that is more important. It's up to us to do our best not to get distracted by that shiny object over there. And it's really easy to do, but it doesn't enhance our lives. Did that make sense?
It absolutely does, and recently I've told a few of my clients, you know, and brought them to that very memory or that very aspect of saying, you know what, past doesn't exist anymore. The future doesn't exist. There's only one point that exists, and that's now. And you're never going to get to that future if you don't focus on the now.
Right. And you're never going to find your happiness if you're not present with the now. And
exactly.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just said exactly. That's it. Just one word out of me, believe it or not.
Who knew that was possible? Everything is about just accepting and allowing for who you are, as you are, where you are. And it's not ideal, and it's never going to be ideal. And that's why I don't believe in goals. Now, a lot of people hear that and they go, what? How could you not believe in goals? Because goals are so necessary. Goals, for me, tend to be awfully rigid, and they tend to create this attachment. And attachment is another one of those things, because the present is always transient. The present is always, always, always changing. And so if we set ourselves up to be rigid attached to a goal, then we are excluding ourselves from the journey. There was one time I was going up to meet my entire family up in the Sequoias. And what happens inevitably when you get up to the campsite is somebody hands you a beverage, and they say, "What was your time?" Because we're a bunch of boys, and we go, for some odd reason, getting there quickly is so important. So I'm doing what I always do, and I'm driving with my significant other at the time, and I'm jamming, and she's saying, "Oh, look at that, that's really pretty," and look at that. And as she's saying that, I find myself getting more and more annoyed. I'm just getting perturbed and finally I just go, I can't look at that because I'm busy driving. Well, she said, slow down and look. Where do you have to be? And it was like I was hit upside the head with a 2x4. Because in that moment, I went, yeah, guess what? I'm missing all of this beauty, all of the different trees and aspects and transitions that we go through as we're going higher and higher into the elevation. And I'm missing all that because I am so fixated on getting there and getting there fast that I missed the entire journey. And at that point, I actually pulled over, stopped the car for a second. She looked at me like I was a crazy person. And I said, just give me a moment. Then I started driving at a much slower rate. And I saw these beautiful trees and this gorgeous horizon. And the sky was this color of blue that is indescribable. And it was stunning. And it was beautiful. And we got to the campsite when we got to the campsite. And I get there, and my cousin opens the door, and he says, "What was your time?" And I looked at him, and I said, "I have no idea." And he said, "Come on, it can't be that bad. You could tell me it was. Well, how slow did you go?" I went, "It didn't matter. At some point, I just figured out that I'd rather enjoy the drive than get here quickly." And that's such an incredible microcosm of a illustration of what we all do every day. We're so busy getting there that we miss here. And here's gorgeous.
I so agree, and you expressed that very, very well. I mean, a wonderful, wonderful example in that, what you said there, because I see that with people every day where they're so focused on, I have to get here by this point, I have to reach this level of success, I have to be married by this age, or whatever that so-called goal is. And you made a really important aspect or really important point that when we attach to things, we're really not in flow with the present situation. And that's not exactly the way you phrased it, but in a way that was kind of the gist of it, because the present moment is always fluid. And people forget that. And attachments, I know, is a really, really hard one for people. Now, you brought up again, Greg, about allowing. And this is something that you mentioned a little bit earlier on when you were told to shut up and be of service. And there's two really big pieces there, which is listening and allowing yourself to be of service and allowing the moment to unfold so you know how to be of service or know what options for being of service are available. Maybe you can share a little bit more about that concept.
Well, allowing goes back to being present, because the more present you are, the more easily we could allow for anything within the given moment. Because any kind of control, whether we're willing to acknowledge it or not, is an illusion. So if we are under the illusion that we're in control, we're living a lie. And if we give up that illusion of control, then the question occurs, what are we left with? what actually do we have if we don't have control? We have choice. And the idea is that we're never, ever going to control the factors in our environment, but we could choose how we dance with them. We could choose how we navigate the waters, but we're never going to leave the waters. The stream is going to be the stream, and we could navigate our ship to either head towards certain things that we want to see and or experience, or we can navigate away from things that we may see as possible dangers, like branches or rocks in the stream. And if we're so busy not allowing by virtue of trying to control, we're just lying to ourselves, and odds are we're going to become fixated and not be able to navigate so fluidly and bump into something really hard. And we're back to karma again.
Really well said. And when you were talking about that concept originally and bringing that up, it brought me back to some of my own lessons along the way where, as you mentioned, you have this concept, this building up, you take the action on it, and you let it go. It's like it can't blossom and it can't flourish when you're holding on really tightly to it. There's no movement.
If you planted a seed and then dug it up every 5 seconds to see its progress, you're never going to have anything but a dead seed. But if you do your part, you make your choices, you water and nurture and fertilize appropriately, and then you let it go and let it have its own participation. Let life just be life and live within it instead of trying to force it or drag it out or pull it out or push it out, then you're going to have dramatically more success. And I know this because I used to be the king of pushing and pulling and forcing and getting that square peg in that round hole. Now, I would do it more often than not, but the cost, energy, time, blood, sweat, tears would be ridiculously expensive and not appropriate to what I reaped from how much I worked. And then there were plenty of times that no matter how much I pulled or pushed or shoved, it ain't going to happen. You do your part and you allow. And that leads us to trust. And you're not trusting the universe. You're not trusting that you know the answers. You're not trusting that you're right or wrong, because ultimately I believe right and wrong are also just fallacies. It's simply light and shadow, not right and wrong. But what you're trusting instead is, even if you don't know, somehow, some way, you're going to figure out what's appropriate for you in any given moment to the best of your abilities from the skill set that you have or the vantage point that you have. And what I mean by vantage point is, as we learn, as we grow, it's sort of like climbing up a mountain. And we're growing and we're growing and we're learning, and we get to this plateau. Well, what we can see from this first plateau are the forests, and we can see the thicket of it, and we can see it all around us. It's wonderful, and it's beautiful, and it has plenty of things to really be grateful for, to appreciate, to recognize, to breathe in. But then as we climb higher, we get to a whole different level, and we can see just the treetops. Now we can see a lot further out, and we have a greater scope of vision. In other words, our growth has enabled us to be able to see more, to access more, and to recognize that there's more that we can choose from. Not that we have to, but we get to if we decide to. And then we climb even higher, and the same thing happens. We have greater scope of vision, we have a greater awareness, and therefore we have greater choice. and there's more to be grateful for in the process.
Beautifully brought around to gratitude, which you started off with tonight as well. And this is one of the things I really love about the way that you work with people is you bring in these examples that when somebody's sitting and listening to you, they go, aha, yes, of course. And it's just like your example of, well, let's look at what happens when you let it go and you stop trying to hold on to it in this really tight way, and you end up with choice. Well, there's so many people that it's such a simple concept in one way, and another way there's so many people that go, oh, I didn't think of that. I didn't realize that. And
I'm sorry, you go ahead, please.
How you're sharing tonight is a lot the way you work with people when you're mentoring them or guiding them.
Absolutely. What I'm talking about tonight are some of the foundation principles from which I work. And every application, every person is so unique and so beautiful, and each in their own way. And one of those phenomenal gifts that I have is I get to see your essence. Now, in those old days when I was pushing and pulling and shoving, I tried to force you into living your essence. And as I grew and as I learned, I found that was awfully arrogant of me. That instead, it serves them and me, by the way, but less importantly in that particular dynamic, it serves the people I'm working with dramatically more if I respect their path and their timing and their process and support them as they choose to be. Again, then that person is the one that's empowered. It's not me dragging them into their own happiness. It's them choosing their happiness as is and when is appropriate for them. And it's so important if somebody comes to me that I have to begin with, and this really to me is the vital aspect of any relationship, and continue with, not only begin with, but continue with throughout, respect for who they are. Not as their essence is showing up, but as they, as a whole entire entity, are showing up in my workspace or in my studio or calling into my radio show or going on a journey with me into the jungle. I have to respect who they are as they are. And if I could begin and carry through with that, then I get to appreciate them. And then I can help them appreciate themselves.
And this is such an important thing when you talk about, especially when people are looking at, I believe, trying to get on their path, so to say, and they're in that discovery phase and they're trying to figure a lot of these pieces out. And you bring up a concept that I've been referring to lately as being bigger than myself. What I'm trying to put out there into the world, it's not about how much money can I earn from this. I mean, sure, that's always a great, wonderful thing to receive that way. But it's about what does this thing that I'm putting out need? What does this thing that I'm creating, where does it want to go? Not where I think it should go, but where does it want to go? And I've learned that in stepping in and realizing that this journey is something that's, in one sense, all about me, and in another sense, it's way bigger than me. And to be able to surrender that process and do the releasing and do the letting go, the beauty that opens in that, I mean, the wonders that seem to show up oftentimes are way more magnificent than what I was visualizing.
So if I understand you correctly, you're making a distinction between a healthy ego and a shadow ego on one level, and then on another level, understanding that whether it's a healthy ego, shadow ego, or some combo platter of both, that ultimately we are within a greater dynamic. And if we can consider ourselves in a healthy ego fashion as a part of the dynamic, and then understand what kind of relationship we want to build between those things, then not only are we better off, but the larger dynamic is better off for the way we're participating with it. Is that fair to say?
Yes. Yes. Definitely fair to say.
Okay.
And I think that's it. And I think, as you were mentioning, so many people try to force their will, but it's in that surrender. It's in that letting go, saying, I might not understand this connection, or I might not understand where this path is going right now. But when I surrender to that journey, and I surrender to being in that moment and saying, let's see what opens up here.
I agree with that entirely. If you're a bird perched on this high nest, that you have to surrender and just let go and get out of that nest in order to fly. You're not subjugating yourself. You're not imprisoning yourself. You're actually freeing yourself. You're liberating yourself by virtue of surrendering to your environment and letting go.
Yeah, the tree doesn't say, oh, no, I don't care where you're going to plant me. I'm going to go grow over there. It says, this is where I am. This is what I have to work with. And let's see what amazing thing I can do within this context, or let's see what I'm going to be offered here.
Help me understand that one, if you would, please.
Well, I mean, the tree doesn't say, okay, you planted me here, but now I'm going to go grow over there.
Mm-hmm.
There's an aspect that it just surrenders. It trusts, it let go, and it says, let me grow. And as it grows in that space, it starts to get better views. As it gets taller, it gets stronger. It doesn't sit there and say, no, I'm not going to grow here. It's a releasing, it's a surrendering to what it has to work with in that moment.
Absolutely. I agree with that. And, if I am fighting the fact that I'm in Los Angeles, for example, then it makes it dramatically more difficult for me to get to some place like San Francisco. Because if I'm not surrendering or allowing or accepting the fact that I'm here, then how am I going to navigate or grow or venture out anywhere else?
Absolutely with that. And it's, these concepts, again, you're sharing some amazing concepts with us. And there's a lot of these things that when you say them, it's just like, of course. Why was I not seeing it from that point of view? Or you have this way when you share with people, Greg, of bringing everything into this crystal clarity and connecting it with somebody's reality. And I find this to be a very important part when people are looking for a coach or they're looking for a guru or a mentor or a guide or whatever term they want to use in this. And people ask me, what should I be looking for? Well, I mean, and I would love for you to share with us in this on your thoughts as well. But I say, well, look for somebody who's walking their talk, for one. Are they talking above your head in all these techno-spiritual terms, or are they talking with you in a way that resonates for you and that it's making sense and it's becoming clear and that you can relate to? Because if you can't relate to it, they can give you all the information in the world. And you're going to go, oh, well, that's a nice set of information.
Well, first of all, I would be really remiss if I didn't backtrack a little bit and say, thank you, what an incredibly lovely compliment. I really appreciate it. And one of the ways that I've learned how to be who I am and tell stories like I do is by working with indigenous elders. Because what I've found is that the truth is not complicated. And if it is complicated, it's buried under there. And it's buried under a lot of stuff that's superfluous, and it's not really all that important. And so if we could get to the simple aspect of it, if we could, one of the reasons I'm good at what I do, and I am good, and I say that not in a way that's egocentric, it's just in recognition, is one of the ways and reasons I'm good is because I'm so good at screwing up. I have messed up in so many different ways. I've tripped, I've fallen, I've bloodied, I've run into walls, I've run into people, I've been all over the place. But as a result, if I didn't go through exactly what you've gone through, I've gone through something that's close enough that I can create an empathetic bridge that we could walk across together if you decide to do so. And I want to circle around again to surrender for a minute, if I may.
Absolutely.
So many people think of surrender as subjugation, as being beaten down, as in knuckling under. And it's so different. You are only imprisoned by your internal world. It's not by what goes on outside of you. Look, Nelson Mandela, almost everybody on this planet can recognize as really a phenomenal human being, was doing hard labor for 20 years, but he was never in prison. And that's because his mindset, his heart, his soul, his body allowed him to choose freedom no matter what his exterior circumstances are. You, with all that you went through, as you claimed earlier, you were date raped 7 times in 1 year. That is so horrific on one level and so holy schmoly. But you didn't allow yourself to be a prisoner of those circumstances. You didn't cut yourself off from your own sensuality, from your own sexuality, from your own humanity expressed in those forms. You didn't allow yourself to become subjugated. And yet you surrendered to the undeniable facts of what happened. And that allowed you the freedom to decide how to go and where to go from there.
I'm really glad that you brought that around, because there are so many people that think that surrendering is a weak place or a giving up place, or, as you say, subjugation. And I found for me that the surrendering is a tremendous amount of strength, and it brings a tremendous amount of peace when I'm willing to allow myself to do that. I really can get to the enjoyment part. I can really get to the happiness part of the experience that's going on. And I find that there's just so much more that's going to happen. It's kind of like if you've got the scuba gear on, or, you're standing on the dock and you're sitting there and you're going, no, I'm not going to jump in the water. And eventually you either jump or you get pushed in, or whatever the case may be. And then you get down in that water and you're like, oh my God, look at this amazing world down here.
Yeah, and the other thing is sitting in I scuba dive, so sitting in a neoprene wetsuit on top of a boat in the heat with all that gear on is horribly uncomfortable, and it's yuck. And who wants to be there? And why are we resisting being in this wonderful, ecstatic environment if we just surrender to just diving in?
Yes. And that is a very powerful place. And I think when we're sitting on that boat in that suit, that's just like making things really complicated when they're really not. You're sitting up there running through all the worries in your head instead of going, it's just as simple as tilting and going right over the edge.
It's in your illustration, it is exactly that and no more. And so many times in life, it's just that as well, just leaning into it. And all we have to do is surrender, and then we're liberated. The only way to lose a battle is to engage in a battle. There's never been a war without a casualty. There's never been a war without a loss of life. And there are so many other things, and we're not there yet. But I truly believe that we're moving into a place where we can go to battle, internally or externally. Or we could choose a way to find peace within ourselves and then within the world around us. You ever notice that, when you're really thrilled with yourself, you're really thinking, darn, I look good, I look sexy, I look hot, or I'm just so smart. It is so much easier to recognize that in that guy or that woman or that person over there. But when you're feeling like, blah, when you don't have your own internal peace, it's hard to recognize that peace in the world that is abundant, that's around us. So if we could save ourselves, for lack of a better way of saying it, if we could work on ourselves to find that love, that respect, that attention, that energy, that appreciation of who we are as we are, then all of a sudden we are freed up to recognize it all over in the world around us and recognize how incredibly wealthy and happy we are and how much the world is offering us incessantly. I think I can get off my soapbox now. I sounded a little like a preacher.
It's so true, and people do get wrapped up in that external focus in the process. They get wrapped up in, oh my gosh, I've got to have this and I've got to have that, and they forget that everything we need is inside of us. Everything we need.
Right, and going back to your monologue earlier tonight, it's that there's so many people that look out and go, well, you know what, when everything's peaceful in my surroundings, then I'll be at peace. No, it's actually not that. There's going to be chaos. The idea is that if you're at peace within yourself, it doesn't matter what the cacophony is, what the craziness, what the noise is all around us, because we're going to carry that peace into any environment. Whereas if we're searching for that one quiet place, then our peace is going to be limited to a very, very small piece of real estate.
And I can't reinforce that enough, what you just said there, because when we stop and find that peace within, that is actually what gives us the strength to get through a lot of these tough circumstances. And I know that is something that I learned to do probably way back in my childhood, way back at the earliest years of my life, is when everything would get really crazy, hectic, chaotic around me, I would just get really still and watch and observe. And all my life, I would be like that with people, where I would just literally become the eye of the storm. When everybody else was going off the deep end and crazy, I would just be totally calm. And I have that come around even again in my own life now. Those that know me know that I'm undergoing huge changes in my life. And I'm in the process of stepping out of a 2,300 square foot home and basically moving into a mini cargo van so that I travel the entire U.S. and to get to that point of letting go, because there was so much tendency of, I have to save this house, I have to save this situation that I created. No, I can change my situation, and as soon as I let go and I surrendered to the fact that I wasn't going to save this house, and I wasn't going to save being in this situation, the doors just opened up. And all these amazing things started coming in. And it's been hectic and it's been scary. And my environment's been upheaved like crazy over the last few months. And I've had to come to terms with a lot of different things. And it's been the calmness. It's been walking out on the deck at 3 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning and stopping and pausing and saying, this is an amazing process. Thank you.
And it just, you said that you've had this tool essentially your whole life of chaos here and chaos there, and you become still. What do you get from that stillness? And how did you learn how to be still, or was it just something that was natural to you?
From that stillness, what I get is I don't get beat up by the hurricane that's whirling around me, for one. Two, I somehow just instinctually within me always knew that by becoming calm, and the more that I strengthened my calmness, the calmer everybody else got around me. They stopped being in the chaotic spaces and the crazy spaces, and the storm would settle down if I stayed calm, if I stood still in that process. And I could see what was really happening. And it allowed me to be of service to people who were no longer, I don't know if I want to say connected, but were no longer in the present moment. Mm-hmm. They were on the freak out button as opposed to being right there and realizing that everything was going to be okay. They were going to get through this one way or another. Mm-hmm. And I became that. It was my way of serving from very, very young, to sit there and be that balance point for everybody around me as they whirled around me. And that's probably part of what drew me into astrology along the way, and some other things, was because that way at least I knew when the storm was coming. I knew when everybody was going to get out there on me. And I just found that for me, it was the calmer I stayed, the more peace I had. And it didn't matter how much was happening around me or if everything was falling down in my world around me. If I just
and I want to
calm,
caution. I'm sorry, I did it again. Please.
It's okay. If I just got calm, I could handle anything. I could see clearly. I could know exactly what to do at which moment.
And that's what I'd like to share with your listening audience, is that if you care for you, then other people that are ready to receive can receive by you modeling. But it's not your responsibility to calm other people's storms. They're either going to get it if they're prepared and open and available to it, or they're not. But the best way that we could help other people is by helping ourselves. The best thing that we could do is, to the best of our abilities, love ourselves, nurture ourselves, nourish ourselves, be who we want to be in this world. And by that, people aren't going to listen to what you say. They're not going to listen to what you teach, no matter how much we babble on. They're going to watch how you live. And they're going to want what you want if it looks tasty, if it looks savory, if it looks attractive. And they're going to emulate that. And that's the best way to teach, too, is you just live well. And then people are going to want to live well if they're ready and available and open to it. And if they're not, no matter how much you do a dance, put on a show, say the right words, illustrate it in 1,000 different ways, but if they're not wanting to, because they still have that great gift of choice, and if they're choosing differently, it's our job to respect that and allow them to have their unhappiness for where they are, as they are, or their level of happiness that they're able to incorporate at this point in their path.
Absolutely. And that watching how somebody lives comes back to something that I mentioned earlier. When you're looking for a guide or a mentor and somebody to work with, look at how they live. What's their lifestyle like? How are they coping with the things in their life? How are they handling different situations? And my example of being the eye of the storm is exactly that. It wasn't about, okay, hey, you've got to do this and you've got to do that. It's like, look, I'm going to show you it's okay. You can be calm. I'm going to show you that you don't have to be wrapped up in this if you don't want to be, or you don't choose to be.
But if you want to be, knock yourself out.
Knock yourself out. And I think that's where a lot of us, as we're developing a lot of the guides, we serve as that light in the darkness. We serve as the eye of the storm. And we let them have their flying around. We let them have their darkness, if that's what they're choosing at the moment. But we stand there ready.
Well, and also, I don't ever want to represent myself as this pristine, pure thing, for lack of a better way of saying it. I am a flawed, screwed up, in-process human being, just like everybody else. You know, I've been blessed because I've been taught by a person or two who I respect immensely, and I've been taught by every single person, from the garbage man to the medicine man. You know, and I get to be imperfect as well. And I never, ever want to represent myself as, look, I'm over here and you're over there. There was a shaman I worked with, and it works incredibly well for him to put himself on a pedestal and to have everybody else look at and say, ooh, he's the great and powerful Oz. Me, I'm the schmo. I'm in the trenches. I'm just doing what I got to do to put the next foot in front of the other one, because that's all we do. And if we could do it on that simple a level, and I could do it maybe, if you'll allow me, by your side for a little bit, maybe we just go a little further down each of our paths together for the time, and maybe separately but with the experience of each other beyond that.
And this is such a good point, because so often it's very easy when you are working with somebody and you've found that person that is a guide or a mentor or guru or whatever for you. It's so easy to put those people on a pedestal. And I notice that with people, they'll come in and they'll just start talking at me, you know, or the next thing I know, I've got 15 Facebook instant messages going, and they forget that I'm a human being just like they are. You know, I might have had a lot of experiences along the way that gave me what I received to work with, but I'm a human being, and I make errors sometimes. And it's so easy, though, when you're studying with somebody, to put them on that pedestal instead of seeing them for who they are. And I think that's an important thing for people to keep in mind.
It's huge, and no matter how many times that I will say essentially what I just said to you, there are people that have literally thought of me as a deity, and there are people that have literally called me Satan and meant it. And I'm just a schmo. I am just a flawed human being in process on my own path, and maybe I could share one or two things that I learned. And I don't want the credit for when you do something phenomenal, and I don't want the blame. I want it to be your power, your life, your choices, and your own appreciation and recognition of self, not of myself, but of yourself. And that's one of those things that I found as a joy in working with people in the middle of the rainforest or in the jungles. There's not a shaman or a medicine man that I've ever come across that's been the real deal that said, "Oh, well, I'm doing this for you." They just do their thing and they go, "Do what you want with me, man. It's all good. Whatever you want is fine."
And I think that's it. And when you find that guide, they know that you need to go out and make your mistakes. They know that you need to go out and do that exploration and learn from that, because that is part of the learning process. And you and me, we're learning with every person that comes to us that we work with. We're, as you say, we're learning from everybody, from the garbage man to the shaman. And that's one of the things I try to reinforce with people is, sure, that's fine. If you want to go out there and study with that guru on the mountaintop someplace, that's all great and fine. But realize you don't have to travel to another country to learn. Your everyday life is going to teach you. Your everyday life is going to give you experiences.
And one of the things that I've found for myself in my own journey is that being at peace on a mountaintop in a cave meditating ain't being at peace. You have to be able to carry that peace with you, whether you're in the middle of, on top of that mountain, or in the middle of a traffic jam, or in the middle of a storm. That peace isn't because of your environment. That peace is what you bring to your environment.
So beautifully said. And I know one of your kind of key concepts that you like to work with is we're not growing when we sit in that comfortable place.
Well, it's funny. That's one of those phrases, comfort zone, that I am incessantly rallying against. The comfort zone is actually really a misnomer. It's an incorrect turn of phrase. It's not comfortable. What it is for all of us, or for most of us, is an acceptable level of suffering, because it's a known quantity that we don't want to venture beyond, so we're going to stay within that kind of suffering. But happiness is only for the courageous. Love is only for the courageous. And if we do not go beyond the familiar, then we are not going into our happiness, into our bliss, into our love of self, the world around us, or another. It takes a lot of courage. And that's one of the things that a lot of Western culture doesn't understand. Often indigenous teaching is looked at as very hard or harsh. I was sent up for a vision fast on top of a mountain. 4 days, 4 nights, no food, no water, staying within a very, very small area. Well, most people look at that and go, the human body can't survive that. It's not supposed to be able to go that long without those things. But we find a way, because we're not just our body, and we're not just our mind. We are all three, mind, body, and spirit. And when those combine, we transcend what are normal boundaries. And we get to find our song. We get to find our passion. We get to find our love for ourselves and for ourselves within the world.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes when we're pushed to some of those harsher situations, that's where we find how creative we can be. That's where we delve deeper and really find out what we have inside of us to work with. I think a lot of times when we are sitting in that really comfortable place, we don't always recognize that. You talk about your quest and going through something like that, and it reminded me of somebody I met many years ago at something that I attended in the Sedona area in Arizona, and she was sharing with me about her work with an Indigenous elder, and she was required to literally be buried
Oh,
for
yeah.
a couple of days.
I know
Not
that's
just
Ooh.
throw some dirt over you. I mean, she was underground for several days. There was no way she was getting out.
Mhm. Yeah. And people hear that and they basically have the reaction that I did, goes "Arr!" because it's terrifying and it's hard and it is terrifying and it is hard. There is amazing, there are so many things that we go through as a part of that process. Being up in the middle of the wilderness, in the middle of the night, out in the middle of nowhere. For example, one night a bear came out and hung out and stared at me for a good 20 yards away, which is really close, and scared the out of me. However, I stayed in that circle, and I did what I had to do, and I kept my intention. My quest that I was given was to find my song, and I kept searching for my song, and I stayed in it, and it wasn't easy, and it wasn't comfortable, and it wasn't a lovely, camping trip. I actually, at the very end of it, it was out in Colorado, and at the very end of this vision quest, not one or two, but 3 monsoon storms actually converged right over the mountaintop that I was staying on. And I was drenched. And I hate being cold. Anybody that knows me knows I hate being cold. And I was cold in a way that I'd never been cold before. I was soaked and cold and miserable, but I found me, and I found my strength, and I found my joy, and I found a smile that I didn't know I had, and I found my song.
So powerful, what you just said, and so incredible. I think that we don't think about those things. So many times we just get wrapped up in the misery that we're feeling in the moment instead of going, okay, what can I do with this? What can
and
I pull out?
trust me, there were moments I was up there and I was completely submerged in the misery of all of it. I was completely fixated on being in hell. But that's part of Indigenous teaching, is that, okay, if that's how you want to get hell, you want to stay in hell, that's a choice. I'm not going to take you down off that hill. But maybe your environment doesn't have to change for you to get out of hell. Maybe you have to change.
Can you say that again? Because that's powerful.
Maybe you don't have to change your environment in order to get out of hell. But maybe you have to change in order to get out of hell, to have that perspective shift, to be in heaven versus hell isn't about the environment. It's about how you bring you to that environment. So the answer is no. Obviously, I couldn't say it again, but I said another version.
And that is a huge key for people, because here again, as we mentioned a little bit earlier, people look on the outside and they say, this situation is making my life hell. This situation is causing me misery. That person is making my life horrible.
Mm-hmm.
No. It's
that whole, there's that cliche about if you're pointing at somebody or something, you actually have 3 fingers pointing back at you. And it is a horrible cliche, yet it's an apt cliche. It is very, very fitting that it's not about that thing over there or that person over there. It's about me. I have a certain amount of choices. I could choose to be miserable. I could choose to stay where I am and make where I am better. Or I could choose to shift my environment more often than not. And if I can't shift my environment, then I need to shift me, because being miserable is not what I'm here on this planet for. And again, that takes courage. And we have deeply, deeply ingrained patterns that they're very much like organic life forms. And they will seduce us, and they'll tease us, and they'll be angry at us, and they'll do anything that they can. These patterns will fight for their lives in order to keep you into that deeply earned rut that you've created by telling this story. Well, if you don't like the story, and the story isn't facilitating your happiness, then it's not about anything but changing your perspective or changing your story. And that comes back to, I'm going to be present. Because every story isn't about what's going on here and now. It's been created from something that preceded it. Did that one make sense?
It absolutely it does. Everything that happens is happening from what happened prior to it. It's coming off of that. And you brought in a good point, and I'm really glad you brought it up, Greg, which is we're not here to be miserable. Sure, we need to embrace the challenges. Sure, we need to understand and acknowledge things that are happening in our life, but we're not here to be miserable. And you talk about the three fingers being pointed back, and oftentimes when I get pushed up against something and I'm hitting my own challenges or struggles, I sit there and I ask myself, okay, what part of this is my reflection? What is the lesson that this is trying to teach me? And also, what is that gift that's in the situation here? And then what am I going to do with it?
We could be stuck in the middle of traffic, flipping people off, cutting people off, yelling at people, and we could even be justified if we wanted to be in all of those things. Or we could be at peace. We could shift our perspective. We could shift our environment. We could shift how we approach our environment. There's so many times that I'll go out to dinner with a friend, and they'll go, well, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? I go, look, going out to dinner is just a pretext. I'm here for this. I'm here for this connection, this intimacy, this relationship. Where we go isn't so important to me. What is important to me is what we're doing right here, this connection, this being here and now. And I get to share time with you, just like I'm doing right now with you, Jess. It's every single time that we share. It doesn't matter if we're sitting at a restaurant or we're sitting in the studio doing an interview. It's just that I am incredibly grateful because I always am appreciative and learning and illuminated and just stimulated. I have so much fun living here and now in this connection that we create together, this relationship that we're developing. And I say that with every single person that I come into contact with to the best of my abilities. There's something here in this moment. It cracks people up that I'll be standing in a line in a market, and all of a sudden I'll be chatting away with everybody around me. It's like all of a sudden a party broke out, and they go, did you know any of those people? No. Well, then why'd you do it? Because it's a whole lot more interesting. My life was dramatically better in that moment because I created relationship. And I was able to do that because I've created a relationship with myself. And then it becomes, I'm interested in my own relationship with me. Then I get to be interested in you. And you're interesting. And the alternative is so boring.
So true. It really is, and you're right. It's when you're present, when you've got that relationship with yourself, and these sound like some very fundamental things, but there's so much depth. As simple as they are, there's a lot of depth there to them, and they are the building blocks to whatever we want to create, I think.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point just now. So you hear me talking about all these concepts. Well, if the listening audience is going, groovy, well, they're concepts. Well, how do they apply? Well, they apply to each single individual differently. If I'm working with somebody that needs a little bit karmic kick in the booty, I do that. But I do it specifically to each individual. If somebody needs just a little bit of holding a mirror up so they can see the beauty of their own reflection, or even the beauty of their own scar, I do that. It's so, these concepts are so big and so simple simultaneously that they don't really take root until you roll up your sleeves and you say, I'm going to have the courage to be happy. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to look at myself in the mirror. And I'm going to resist the temptation to make it a funhouse mirror that has a warped, twisted reflection coming back at me. I'm going to do my best to figure out the most accurate reflection of me that I could appreciate and recognize and love. And therefore, I get to take that in the world with my attitude. That's my energy of life, of appreciation, of love. And that leads to another aspect. In order to do all these things that we're talking about, there's one other really integral component, and that's forgiveness. There are so many of us using up so much bandwidth to beat ourselves up for what we did yesterday, to carry that like it's a whole bunch of rocks in a rucksack that we're carrying along with us everywhere we go, that it's necessary for me to do penance for those sins that I've done before. No. If you want to be happy, it's necessary for you to learn and apply here and now. Learn and apply, learn and apply. Over and over again. It's like lather, rinse, repeat. If we could just forgive ourselves as a part of this, that I am no longer going to blame me or beat myself up, but I'm going to make choices based on my experience and make this moment better. That's truly, truly doing something not only for you, but everybody else in this world as well.
And I think that's a beautiful place to wrap up with everything you've been saying, is really, what am I going to do with this moment? What am I going to do to make this moment amazing? Anything that you want to share with us, Greg, as we wrap up our time with you, because it's just flown by, and it's been exciting to listen to you and to get your thoughts and to get your insights tonight, and to have you sharing the way you work with people and the way that you think. And I want you to also make sure that you share your website, how people can contact you, how they can reach you.
It's incredibly simple. It's gregfriedman.com. And Greg is easy enough to spell. Friedman is spelled Friedman. So that's gregfriedman.com. Check it out. It'll have stuff about my radio program where we have people like you on, and all kinds of elders and teachers and healers and people of service, and it talks about different journeys that I've done and different ones that I'm going to do in the future, where I take people to have really life-altering experiences. And it talks about working one-on-one. One of those things that we didn't even get a close thing to talking about this evening was what you meant when I said I'm a couples referee and translator. Well, you know what? The main thing that I do with couples when I'm working with them is I have them there go to their neutral corners, and then I translate. And you'd be astounded at how often I'll listen to what one person says, translate it, and the other person will just look at their partner and say, "You did not say that. There's no way you said that." And he'll look back at her and say, "Yeah, I did." Or she'll look back at him and say, "Yeah, I did." Because we don't hear a lot of times because we're so busy filtering through our own prism. And if I can leave with a couple things, it's courage is a necessity for happiness. Courage is a necessity for love. And forgiveness and acceptance are also vital components. Along with this one, Jess, I am hugely grateful to you now and every day, and for this opportunity, and for your listening audience. Thank you all. I am so grateful for this moment, for this life, and for this opportunity. Thank you.
It's such a pleasure to have you on, Greg, and really an honor for me to bring you in and to have you on the show, and would love to have you back and highlight some of the other work, like the couples referee work that you do, because we didn't get a chance to, hardly but tip some of what you do here tonight. So I am in deep gratitude for you for what you've provided me along the way, as well as giving your time and your energy to this show this evening. So thank you for that.
You are quite welcome. It's an honor and a pleasure.
And we've been talking with Greg Friedman tonight. Again, if you'd like to find out more about his work, you can go to his website, www.gregfriedman.com. That is at the bottom of the show description. And Friedman is spelled Friedman. Next week, I'm going to have Victoria Vives Kwong on, who will be talking about sound frequencies. You won't want to miss her. She is doing some very unique work. She does a lot of work from the 11th dimension planet of Lyra that she channels in her work, as well as numerous things. She's a very fascinating person, so you're absolutely going to love tuning into her as well. You can go on my website, Jessie Ann Nichols George, the number 1. You're going to find all kinds of things on there, monthly specials, events going on. The 2014 Compassion Tour is underway. It starts in about 2.5 weeks, and I'm going to be traveling all over the U.S., so you'll have a chance to connect with me, attend events that I'm going, come and take advantage of doing live private sessions with me while I'm on the road. It's going to be an amazing time. And I do want to mention that we've got several shows here on Main Street Universe throughout the week. Sunday nights, we have Darren Bouquet, who's a reader at Madame Laveau in New Orleans, doing spiritual insights. Monday nights is Randy Goldberg doing Vedic astrology. Tuesdays, Susan Weed is up with her work in herbs and natural plants. Wednesday nights, we have Daniel and Janice on our flagship show called Main Street Universe, and I just heard that Evan Paz is coming back to our network as well. Thursdays, Queen Mother Amaku, who focuses on wise woman renegade and Egyptian culture. Fridays is Kevin Baird walking on the sidewalk with his Horizon Oracles Journeys deck, a deck that he created, and you can learn more about that deck at templeofgaia.com. And, of course, Friday nights is Activating Compassion in the Midnight Hour. Hey, this is Jessie Ann Nichols George, and I want to thank you so much for being here tonight. Again, thank you to all of our listeners, not only through Blog Talk Radio, but also those streaming live on PEN, known as Pair Encounters Network, StreamFinder, and TalkStream Live, as well as those catching our podcast at iTunes, TuneIn.com, and those catching the YouTube version of the show. Hey, I look forward to seeing you back here next week as we delve more into activating compassion. Don't forget that if you've enjoyed the show this evening, share it with others. It's going to be available at the same link in our archives. Greg addressed some amazing concepts tonight. Really, really wonderful. It's something that you're going to want to come back and listen to because I know I will be doing that. And I'm going to leave you tonight with the song Yearning For, also known as Over and Over by Shimshai. And again, you can find out more about Shimshai's work, where they're touring, where they're at shimshai.com. That's SHIMSHAI.com. Thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you again next week, right here on Activating Compassion in the Midnight Hour. May you enjoy the rest of your weekend and have a truly amazing week.
And if I could see what makes me blind, I would soar to the edge of my mind and to touch what seems unreal, just to show you the way that I feel. And we are in time with time, one with the season of change inside. And we are in tune with the tune, caught in a balance of sun and moon. Oh, deep inside, the light within, shining to show you it's here to begin. When all I have is all I need, I will soar to the edge of eternity. And we see it eye to eye, one within love to be for the divine. And we're walking hand in hand, caught in the balance of God and man. Over and over, life is your lover, learning to walk just a little bit slower, whispering secrets, but that you can't keep it. No turning back now, this time we reveal it. One to another, all will discover the essence within the most beautiful lover. Time is still turning, the love is still burning. Deep in your spirit, your heart still yearning for. Yearning for. Within love to be for the divine. And we're walking hand in hand, caught in the balance of God and man. And we are in time with time, one with the season of change inside. And we are in tune with the tune of life in the circle and love in blue. And over, life is your lover, learning to walk just a little bit slower, whispering secrets, but that you can't keep it. No turning back now, this time we reveal it. One to another, all will discover the essence within the most beautiful lover. Time is still turning, the love is still burning. Deep in your spirit, your heart still yearning for. Over and over, life is yours.